Now, how could I be late if I literally just made the event?
Welcome back to the channel, ladies.
Boom, boom, boom. 2.5 on the event, 3 in reality, but I also have to make the posts to promote the damn thing. Setup takes time. The show really doesn't start until I walk in. Anyways. Botrix is not synced. Strange Bang Debunking. Too many emotes. Bounce. Bounce, my hands. Bounce. The hands aren't bouncing. That's a problem. Boss is taking a sweet ass time to sink in. One of these days. One of these days. I'm gonna put my hands on it. Anyways. Hello, chat. I come to you today bringing you bad tidings from the world of Datings Tomorrow. Sponsored by Horror. We've talked about this topic so many times in the past. However, I bring you talking points that are even gayer than the ones we've talked about before. Oh, for the same reasons. But now we're going to see another perspective. And while that is happening, I generate the link for people to jump into the room for. One of those downside consequences with having to set shit up. I can't type. I can't type. Okay, that link's there. Boy, when a lot of people retweet one thing at the same time, it makes it actually impossible and illegible to fucking read. You know what? Boom. Okay. Today we're working off of a watch together format. You are joining the stage. I'm going to ask that you join the watch together so you can follow along and pay attention. Try to ask questions in a semblance of time and try to keep things brief and moving. Guess I'm going to be starting by myself alone. Let's go.
Welcome back to the channel, ladies, gentlemen, lizard people, and variants thereupon. If you're new here, my name is Weebo Jones, and today we enter that most dread of relationship statuses, the friend zone.
If she wanted to hook up, would you?
There are a lot of worse places to be than the fucking friend zone. I'm jacking the volume.
Hook up.
Welcome back to the channel.
300.
Welcome back to the channel, ladies, gentlemen, lizard people, and variants thereupon. If you're new here, my name is Weebo Jones, and today we enter that most dread of relationship statuses, the friend zone.
There are a lot worse places that men can be in the friend zone. There are a lot worse places than women can be than the friend zone. Realistically, the friend zone is the place that you end up being in when you do not want to really be able to tell yourself and those that you claim are your dating romantic partners that you do not care enough about them to let them in your pants. Realistically, if we're being fucking serious, there's no such thing. You are scared to break the tension, which would signal to the sense that there is a zone, but it's not. It's they don't want to date you. The first thing we should probably do away with a bunch of fucking myths is the concept of the friend zone. Either you're fucking or not. If you are not fucking and they are not your friend, they are a romantic interest. Job done. Men, if they are not your personal friend and you have romantic tension with them and they are not reciprocating, they are literally just a woman. Women, if he is not directly your friend and there is romantic tension and or unrequited and unreturned sexual advances or romantic advances, he is literally just a guy. Hit him with a baseball bat. There's a lot worse places you could be than the friend zone. 100%. All the time. There's a lot of worse places you can be in than the friend zone. For example, jail. For stalking.
If she wanted to hook up, would you hook up?
Oh, totally. Look at her.
He is not your friend, ladies.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, Matt Rife, the man that you guys canceled immediately after he stopped tailoring jokes specifically for a women's perspective and opinion. Yeah, that's the comedian we're gonna stick in there. Although he is right, but not for the reasons that I just explained.
There's always going to be a level of attraction.
Yep, and we're gonna pull Sneeko too. Just get in all the back takes. Come on, where's Pearly Things?
If that's ever
Pearl,
on the table,
where are you?
That's not a real friendship.
But you've also found a characteristic in her that you like enough to be friends with her. What's the third step on that?
Guys are not going to be friends with girls to be friends with them. I was like, if they want to have a friend, they'll go find a guy.
So, that's like, oh god, that's a hodgepodge of the worst takes of the worst takes. Okay. Math Rife is evocative of the same advice that I could give as a retired fuckboy. Pumping Brent Fayaz during hot nigga summer while we're out in these streets combating the scourge of city girl. Random men are not your friend. Friends that you've been friends with since childhood, and they've had to grow up with the fact that, damn, I'm really sexually attracted to my friend, but I'm also emotionally interested in my friend. Not the same fucking thing. Not the same fucking thing. Because if you're interested in a woman, you are in fact late. Welcome, War. Yes, we are starting off with the top of the list. So Evie. I'm also inside of a watch together room. The link is inside the chat. The fuckboy is not your friend. You can have a friend that is a fuckboy, but the fuckboy is not your friend when it comes to relationships. Because if you do not personally know that guy to the point where you can have a serious conversation with him, it is literally just another romantic option. It is literally just another romantic caller. Watch his work. Okay. He's literally just a romantic caller. And for what Matt Rife is talking about in his joke, considering that he wrote all of his material to pander to a female audience before they decided to cancel him, the fuckboy exists solely to get in your ass. No pause. Sometimes very minimal lube, and rarely bad head game. He exists to put you as a notch on his belt and then move the fuck on. Now there are of course Casanova fuckboys that exist to give you that intrigue. Finally, the bot did its job. There are Casanova fuckboys that exist to be lover boys, that their way to maintain a roster is to get women that they can have as homegirls. But the second that that dark liquor gets in a system, that dark liquor makes them a liquor nigga. 100%. Because unfortunately, one of the things that is the scourge of the dating marketplace is that every single tomboy that exists in the dating marketplace have been minimized down like we are the US mining for fucking oil. Every single masculine type girl that can be friends with men has been excoriated by friend groups and has been told that she wants to do nothing but destroy relationships and connections with other people. I'm changing my shirt. And to that edge, that woman and the women like her that seek to exterminate the tomboys, because if they're not a transgender woman or a person who they assume has no interest in the men that they're into, are seen as a fucking threat. And on the same end, men, if they are not gay, are seen as a fucking threat as well. Because even men are a threat as long as it is suspected that he is more bisexual than he is gay. I really need to pee all of a sudden. Fuck. Happy birthday, Mariner. You saw the Whatever Podcast thumbnail we about to eat. I put several types of talk shows, dating shows, and dating video informations in the thumbnail. Anyways. The same way that the tomgirl is hunted, or excuse me, the tomboy is hunted, is the same way that the guy is hunted. The fucking isolation shield doesn't help for shit. Anyways. The tomboy is hunted the same way that every single man inside of a social group is hunted by women that are trying to suspect that he is actually single, trying to take advantage of a woman, and also that any man seeing another man in the friend group of their women would be suspected as a traitor, which leads to a bunch of fucking jokes that people have, where they'll say, staking out at the girlfriend's sleepover party and making sure the gay guy's really gay, and then just, you know, something white comes out of his mouth. It is probably the most annoying part about social vetting, because it's one element of what makes the dating market annoying, because this information is effectively kept by these women. It's probably the biggest reason why people like Louis McClung and Cataclysms and TikTok-oriented content creators, including that woman that was trying to cope on behalf of Love and Deep Space, are probably the most annoying people in general. Because this is the zeitgeist, that's the net. All of those influencers, all of those random people, all of those girly girls that give deference to a fucking worldview that they themselves are actually not a part of, and that they don't live up to. They are the ones that create that dynamic and destroy that industry and make an industry unto themselves. Which then, when you tie that into Matt Rife here,
There's always
you immediately fucking smash cut to fucking Sneeko. Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna take advice from Sneeko, the man who has no philosophy of his own, so he simply copies whoever the fuck he's closest to.
going to be a level of attraction. If that's ever on the table, that's not a real friendship.
But you've also found a character.
I know this woman's name. It's strongly African. Her skin is light, but her name is extremely black. I can't pronounce it. I just know that there's two O's in the first name and the last name.
Characteristic in her that you like enough to be friends with her. What's the third step on that?
She said something very important there.
On the table, that's not a real friendship.
But you've also found a characteristic in her that you like enough to be friends with her. What's the third step on that?
The clip cuts in when she's talking about the second quality. But what she's basically laying out there is the steps of what you would need in order to create a relationship with a woman and a relationship with a man. A relationship with any other person. Based on the green flags that denote that a relationship potential exists here. If you like the person and you like being around the person, what is the third step characteristic that you're supposed to be waiting for that is telling you to not pull the trigger, so that you can simply pull the trigger and see whether or not a relationship could work? Because outside of they need to say yes, you need to say yes, and then you need to actually put in emotional investment to make the situation work. Effectively, the third characteristic is I like them, they like me, we like being around each other. Usually, the guy likes women more than the women likes the guy. Men are not picky. We look for basic prime characteristics that we like in other people and in the people we are comfortable with in our lives that make us feel that way personally. I think it's Ojama? It's like Ojama and then a really long string of names that I can't pronounce right now. Nick, no brat Billy. It's your birthday. We're here for positivity. We're here to create outcomes that help. All of this is kind of similar to where you find yourself, but no black pilling. I've known you long enough. No black pilling. Lost my train of thought. Men will attach themselves to a fictional character if that fictional character gives them some meaning of life. To echo off of what Fatal just said, nice legal age and she likes me back. It's pretty much anything anyone actually would actually want to ask for when it comes to them being in a relationship with another person. Women, it is a spreadsheet. I think the best word to describe it is dating by committee, because it's not enough for her to be into them. She also has to put them before the council. And then, after putting them before the friend council, he has to go on trial dates. Or he has to tolerate the shit test. And by tolerating the shit test, there it is. By tolerating the shit test, then he has to then meet the parents. Then after meeting the parents, he has to be shit tested by whether or not he's going to embarrass her in public. And then, of course, the number one dreaded thing that actually kills any relationship with a woman, outside of, her stealing your clothes, her stealing your personal outings, starting to adapt to your likes, because men will not change themselves so much as they will try to meet the expectation. Unless, of course, they actually just change themselves entirely for a woman. That's an entirely different kind of person. A little sappy. Guys that are a little sappy and they beg. And they sound good when they're pleading. But whether she makes you change, or you choose to change willingly in just a few ways possible, the real standard on whether or not the relationship with a woman works is whether or not she is transmogrifying herself into a version of herself that she thinks would best work for you in the relationship. So basically, becoming a succubus. If the woman does this, the relationship is fucked. Because that's not really her. I come back to the dreaded test. Give a woman a plate of wings, 20 pieces, casual buffalo sauce, 4 to 10 napkins, no silverware. If she does not smash that fucking plate like a Neanderthal goblin hunting the American hinterlands for fucking woolly mammoth, you don't want her. Because outside of boundaries, that's weird. Because outside of boundaries and a desire to respect boundaries, you have to be as close to your normal self as you possibly can. This is something that women struggle with. In general. You can't eat that many wings? It's okay. It's not about the quantity of wings you eat, it's about whether or not you try to eat them pretty. Because something that men do that women do not understand in this modern dating environment, and they don't understand it because they don't have older women scholars to teach them, because the older women do not want to help the younger women because they don't see a reason to help people who don't want to learn from their consequences. Something that these women do not get that men do for them. How do you eat wings pretty? Eating wings pretty. Trying to use silverware. Trying to use any amount of prim and proper status to cover yourself, hide yourself. If you are not taking wing, open mouth, pull out clean, gnawing on the bone, that's eating pretty. Social convention would be the shorter way to describe this. Modern social convention, meaning women are supposed to be attractive. They're not supposed to look mannish or unattractive. Therefore, eating unpretty makes them unattractive. Therefore, they eat pretty by trying to be prim, proper, and presentable at all times, like they are a fucking contestant at a debutante ball. There's a more accurate description for you. Women choosing to eat pretty like this is an adaptation of the inverse problem that guys will have and will do on women's behalf. And that is that men will ruin themselves in the eyes of women on purpose to help their egos. We've been doing it for years. Men that have no reason to want to help your ego do it. Men who personally know you, especially the guys who have romantic interest in you. I'll fix the camera in a second. That have romantic interest in you. Do it. Your ex-boyfriends that you remain amicable with. Your ex-partners that you remain amicable with. They all do it. We all do it. And the simple fact of it is that it all revolves around that inability for women to understand that. Because that's probably the biggest thing that a guy actually needs, that missing third quality. Which, to finish your sentence, it's technically not a third thing, it's a fourth thing. I like her, she likes me, we like being around each other, and she feels safe with me. If a woman does not feel safe with a man, that man would rather fucking break his own goddamn neck than be in a situation where he's made a woman feel uncomfortable. Should he not care about making women feel unsafe? It's also the same reason why on Jay's stream last night, because they sussed her on YouTube, so she had to continue it on Twitter. Why in that 25 or 20-on-1 Michael Knowles panel on transgender politics and debates on transgenderism, with a bunch of people that had some cis people there, but mostly transgender people who were more identitarians than they were actual paragons of the trans conversation. They felt more concerned with trying to unsettle than actually have a conversation, which is this exact same scenario of modern dating. They would rather unsettle than have a fucking conversation. Because it's hard. It's hard to have a conversation. For all the reasons that you could be annoyed or at contempt, the number one reason is you have to feel unsafe. And you have to feel annoyed. And you have to feel out of pocket, and you have to feel awkward. Men, we've been awkward the entirety of our lives. Women, they're not used to being socially awkward, and they don't like being socially awkward. And as a part of this, a lot of what stops those guys is that they do not want to be in that situation with a woman, no matter fucking what. Not only because the second you bring your fucking phone into it, I have no desire to be anywhere near you anymore. But also, it is better for us to save the woman's ego so that she blows it off of herself before she gets petty and takes it to the fucking internet or takes it to her circle of friends. Because then it will add to that environment. It's probably the most important defensive measure that every man has ever learned to do in their lives, because it's similar to a form of compromise. I've been asked a question. Continuing.
that.
Guys are not going to be friends with girls to be friends with them. I was like, if they want to have a friend, they'll go find a guy.
Guys are more than capable of having female friends. The problem that we always come up to is that the most annoying part of this is that, well, much like the many times it's actually come up whenever it comes up to people finding themselves in the positions they find themselves in, as we learned with good old Naomi King, sometimes some niggas fuck their friends. Some guys fuck their friends. It's called being friends with benefits. Unfortunately, it's basically also being called having multiple open emotional relationships with none of the committal of a deep romantic development. Also known as a lie. They're lying to themselves. Because whether it's friends with benefits, or having a roster, or casual hookups with the intent to date, or the intent to marry, it's a lie. You are not dating to find a boy, or find a girl, or find a husband, or find a wife. You are dating because you are basically the true definition of a coal burner. It is probably the worst part that creates some of the most annoying emotional states in general, because it all comes down to ego. More the ego of the women than it does of the men, but the men can also be egotistical. There's also bad possessive personality states, but that's outside the scope of this conversation. But to keep it brief and simple, yes, you can have friends. You can have female friends, you can have male friends. You can have transgender friends, you can have gay friends, you can have pansexual friends, you can have asexual friends. You can have heteroromantic friends. You can have heteroromantic omnisexual friends. The problem is that the connection needs to be more than just the superficial version of what people tell you friendship is. Because two people who can talk to each other is a friendship. It is not what you see in a romance film. You have plenty of dude friends. Carl doesn't want to fuck me, granted he doesn't know what I look like. I'm not going to speak to half the difference of that question, but what I will say is that I have plenty of female friends and male friends and transgender friends and gay friends, some of which have actively done the sweet boy to me, and I don't know how to describe it. Whether I'm in a relationship or not in a relationship, there is Carl. I'm not a man, I'm not a woman, I'm a Carl. Carl could give a fuck less about the gender of the person who's with him there, because I'm still Carl. Hi, ma'am, I'm Gibby. I didn't ask. I'm still Gibby. Part of that is like learning and growth, of which none of you need to know the personal details of, but Horror and I know the personal details. A lot of that affects that. But it is possible for the opposite sex to be in relationships of the platonic heteronormative standard without one or both parties wanting to lay in bed with the other for carnal purposes. That's how I'm going to phrase that. Also, TLDR, why can't men and women be friends? Because women have too big an ego. Not women in specifics, women in general. If we're talking about the dating market, we're talking about the fact that women cannot handle the fact that men are friends with them, and then also can be able to go around, because women get emotionally connected and attached, and then they get jealous. It's also the same reason why polyamory doesn't work. Men can get jealous and women can get jealous, but women will be infinitely always be more jealous of other women because of social status. If a woman perceives herself to be losing social status in the mind of the man that she wants to be involved with and in control of and have to her deference, she will always be jealous of those people, and they will then forever play the social game that creates the society where men that are 6 and under are not people until they can do something financially and monetarily for you. That's the short answer. In my opinion, in my words.
Let's start this video off with a question, shall we?
Here we are at the Utah State University Library for some interviewing to ask people if they believe that men and women can be just friends.
If you ask women this question, it's more than likely the answer is yes.
Do you believe that men and women can be just friends?
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yes, I do.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
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 Men and women can be friends, even if the guy is attracted to them.
Of those guy friends, do you think any of them secretly like you? And be honest,
Probably, yeah.
do you think that guy is interested in you?
Yes. Okay, maybe you can only be just friends in high school, because most guys won't just be my friend.
Would Dave hook up with you if you gave him the chance?
Well, yeah.
Do you think Trevor liked you?
Yes.
And
Shoot.
would he hook up with you if you wanted to hook up? So he likes you. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is men and women can't be friends.
No, we can be friends.
But you're just friends, but he likes you.
Yes.
But if you ask men this question, they'll be more likely to say no than the women were.
There's a reason why I would say no. I'm gonna let her finish. But I'm gonna add on that this question will change depending on the places you ask this. If I did a segment called Nigga on the Street, and I went out to Atlanta, and I walked around from Buckhead to Bankhead to Central Atlanta to the weeb centers of the capital, and maybe even I fuck around long enough to find Brianna the Womannequin out there in the streets, and I asked the question, can men and women be friends? I can almost promise you I'm going to hear the most ratchet cases of no with explanations you have ever fucking heard. If you go and ask this question in Pennsylvania, or in Ohio, or in Wyoming, you probably will get different answers than if you walk around in the major cities of Texas and New York City and California and Oregon. It's very regional based. And the explanations for why it's regional based always factor to being different. Now I'm gonna let her finish. Also, Horror is right. You can be friends even if there's attraction one way or another. Because mutual and emotional maturity and respect dictates that you can recognize the chemistry and then as adults with control over your social compunctions, not act upon it.
I think it'd be hard to do.
No. No. I don't believe so. No.
I guess what I'm saying is no.
The reason stated is often that they find themselves attracted to women, more so than not.
If she wanted to hook up, would you hook up?
Oh, totally. Look at her.
Don't be sarcastic. I need the truth.
Seriously, yeah.
All right, there we go.
Because of physical attraction, it's not possible.
But these are college examples. Let's take a moment to consult with our relationship experts on the matter.
No.
I mean, to be serious, when we're talking about college, we're talking about the primary point in our lives where after living, assuming that you go to a public school and not a private school, this goes doubly if you end up going to a private school and then you go into a public environment. Technically, even then, inside of a private ecosystem, you still have the same issue. So I suppose it doesn't matter either way. Well, let's talk about full shelter. You have been sheltered your entire life, homeschooled, the most closed off that you can get. You've only ever been educated at home. You have all the compunctions and you have all the necessary skills to be able to socialize, but you have absolutely zero socialization skills and thus zero dating skills. Is it possible for a person that comes from that environment in homeschooling to then go into a college environment after having gone through the entirety of what would have been the socialization skills of primary school, secondary school, and higher learning of secondary school, to then go into higher education in college and have relationships with other people and be capable of being friends with people that they find sexually attractive? The general answer is going to be, it depends. Because there is no definitive case example there, because you're now dealing with the most purest example you'll have to go off of. Socializing wise, we are always meant to go into college and basically sow wild oats. That is almost quite literally the function socially that colleges and higher education seek to compound against you, to the point backed up that is coming out of your eyes level of awkward. I don't know what you mean by that, struggler. Let me finish my sentence. Colleges, especially as I attended mine, are designing the curriculum and the grouping of people going into their classes and gaining their credits to force social interactions on us. They force freshmen to get involved with people in their class year instead of focusing academically on their studies. They want you to go to classes at the same time. They want you to learn about your classmates. They want you to be involved with your classmates. They want you to be involved in social adventures and activities and student life groups with your classmates. They want you to go on Rush. They want you to connect to as many things as possible to give you something that ties you to the college. And if you are at a college and you're seeing the same people all the time, they literally design it where even a homeschooled Amish kid will find themselves really challenging themselves to be emotionally attractive and not act upon the emotional attraction that they could find in someone else that they're with at that college. Because that's unfortunately what colleges have now become for. Even the most Ivy League scholar example. Every single bit of your social interactions, including the people you've been in bed with, could then end up being a networking connection that you can pull back on later in your life. Anyways.
How come you're saying no?
It just never works. There's always going to be a level of attraction. If that's ever on the table, that's not a real friendship.
Guys are not going to be friends with girls to be friends with them. I was like, if they want to have a friend, they'll go find a guy. But these guys are not your friends. They're planting seeds and hoping someday that it'll sprout.
If a man is friends with a woman that he is attracted to, personally is attracted to, which means not only are you attracted to the way that she looks, but you've also found a characteristic in her that you like enough to be friends with her. What's the third step on that, on that graph there?
So some people will opine with absolute certainty that men and women could never be friends. Just like people probably asserted to Orville and Wilbur Wright that humankind would never fly, or how people will, to this day, assert that the earth is flat with all of the certainty. But going to clarify why a friendship between a man and a woman is untenable, that the guy, in most instances of friendship, is willing to sleep with a woman should an opportunity present itself.
When you and your boyfriend find...
Well, this is just the echoing of men are always eager, which is probably the biggest barrier to why friendships between the genders end up being impossible more times than not. That, if we could kill that, if every single time a woman enters into a scenario with another man, if we could eliminate the idea that if he wanted to, he would. If we could kill the phrase itself, if he wanted to, he would. If they wanted to, they would. We could eliminate 55% of the noise in the dating market today. We could destroy that concept and change the market today. Because yes, a man who wants to do something will do something for you. But at the same time, if you ask him to do something, and you make the connection first, you establish the connection first, you establish the baseline first, he'll probably also still do it. Nick, no do starting. Doing it again. If you ask them as friends, they will probably do it. Short and sweet. But you have to be capable of making the choice first and reaching out to do it. Or should you be similar in something like Nick's position, where he says he doesn't have any connections? You have to find a way to create one, which you do have one, Nick. You have the online connections. IRL, it's a bit more impersonal, but this is the glory of the internet. The ability to create those connections and then find people where they are, because that's the other side of the coin. If they wanted to, they would, but only if you meet them halfway. If you meet me halfway, crossing along the borderline, is where I want to wait for you. They be looking out night and day, put their heart to the limit, and this is where they stay. I got smuts on my computer top. I need to dust this thing out. Anyways. No, I know. Being willing to meet isn't your issue. Either who. Get out of your head.
Finally break up. Who do you go run into? Me. It's about patience. All I've had to do is play it cool and stay in the game long enough and wait for the day that you come banging on my door, crying your eyes out. And I just have to play stupid, like, why are you crying? He is not your friend, ladies.
And while some research...
Perfect case example of what I meant by fuckboy comedian doing what fuckboy comedian is designed for. That's pretty much the basic reason why that exists, right there, in a nutshell. So the idea that you have many men waiting in the wings, waiting for you to break up with your current man, or for you to divorce your husband, saying, oh my god, that's so crazy. I can't believe he did that. Let me help you out of these panties. Oh my... Girl! That is the biggest reason why women act the way they do now. Because the idea of what women are now is basically men with vaginas. Modern women behave like men with vaginas. Sometimes even raging hard penises, depending on whether or not they take too much drugs and steroids. Or they hyper-aggress and explicitly, especially in black communities, push the number and say, no, I'm gonna have you at home. I'm gonna lock you up. You're gonna cook my clothes. Cook my clothes. You're gonna fucking cook my food. You're gonna clean my clothes. I'm gonna give you everything you need to. I'm gonna be a kept man. And they try to force you to say something along the lines of, I'm not a slave, so they can sit there and go, oh! Oh! I'm making ask questions again.
Suggests that cross-sex friendships are complicated by covert attractions, especially among the emergent adult population. I don't find this argument to be at all conclusive on the matter of whether cross-sex friendships are viable. If the crux of the issue is purely grounded in the possibility of attractions and the opportunistic nature of humankind, then the argument just isn't borne out to me. especially not in the current day when human sexuality is not as taboo as it has been in the past. Because...
Dude, I'm gonna be so dead ass with you, Weeaboo. I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this to you. The sexual degenerates have nothing to do with it. It's because they're not men and women. Oh, I wish I could remember where that historic post was. You've got women, you've got girls, you've got females, you've got hoes, you've got chicken heads. You've got men, you've got boys, you've got guys, you've got niggas, and you have sexual predators. The 5 delineations of what men and women are. The men that would sit inside of a woman's DMs, gassing her up, giving her attention, giving her social validation, are not men. That's problem number 1. They're not men because men would state their intentions and their goals clearly. Those are guys. So when somebody repeats the meme, he's literally just a guy, hit him with your car, they're saying he's not a man because if he was a man, he would grow a spine, or would gain a spine, or would get the ability to use his spine. He would take it out of the other woman's purse, if it's a woman that's holding him back. He would take it out of wherever the fuck he needs to find his footing, and he would stand up and do what it is he wants to do, and then, off the merits of whether or not you tell him yes or no, he continues on his way, but there is no love lost, because he's done exactly what a man would do. Weebo. Yeah, I probably am. I'm just trying to not sit here saying nothing.
Dear viewers, in my brief 26? Is that how old I am?
26?! White women not cracking.
Oh my goodness. In my brief 26 years on this planet, I have had plenty of individuals express a level of attraction to me both before and during the course of my relationship. And believe it or not, these interested parties have been men, but they have also been women. And all variants thereupon. And therein lies the linchpin of the issue with the asserted reasoning of individuals, both college-aged and otherwise. In a world where men could sleep with men that they find attractive, and women could sleep with women that they find attractive, or you could sleep with both sexes that you happen to find attractive, how does one navigate friendships when behind every curtain is the possibility that your friend is just waiting in the wings to sleep with you? That logic would have you thinking the current friendship scene is a veritable minefield of potential opportunistic sex pests with no interest then in what you can do for them and their reproductive organs in the current climate. And then...
reciprocity of receptive and reciprocative gift-giving.
is too nihilistic for my tastes. No. Dear viewer, can you imagine if you had to go about your day fielding all manner of sexual propositions, real or imagined, if you had to keep an eye out for every individual you encountered to make sure that they had no improper motives? Can you imagine if you had to signal in reassurance to the public your true intentions every time you spoke a word or said an action that was ambiguous?
Pause what?
You said something gay, so you gotta say no homo, or else you a homo.
But what did I say gay?
You said you was gonna give this dude everything you got, no homo.
That's not gay.
That sounds like an exhausting, lonely, friendless, and isolating existence, of which I want no part. That logic might have had its merits in a more antiquated time period. But it's safe for me to say that the logic, when applied in a modern context, today is flawed at best when you account for the current day situation. Believe it or not, men and women today can be friends. It happens all the time. I myself have several successful friendships with men spanning years. But still, a few questions remain. What's going on here? Why is there this prevailing sentiment that men and women can't be just friends? Why does it appear that men might be more struck with this affliction than women? And
because the situation of men being friends with women and women needing to be terrified has reversed. Short answer. We'll see if she minds it out in the same position I do. As a man who has been victimized as a food nigga, men are worried that women are only into us or want to be around us for our money, and therefore people that are either below or equal to our position in the dating environment will not interact with us if not for an ulterior motive. So a woman will use a man for a date, or will use a man for attention, and when he can no longer offer her anything, she leaves that guy on red, ignores him, until she needs a pick-me-up when the man that she actually wants talks to her. We've watched too many home math clips, but unfortunately you don't have the home math clip I'm describing on hand. But where women before would have said, all these men only want to have sex with me, they don't actually want to be in a relationship with me, what men have arrived at is the position of women, where men have all of this excess money and all of this excess time, and all of these women, whether they are influencers or not, specifically the ones that choose to use social attention as the net that they cast to find pay pigs, men have found themselves in a position where the women that approach them make them concerned that the only reason they are talking to them is because they have money. Where most women, especially those that have been wallflowers for the majority of their lives, with little to no dating experience, can simply just exist in the ether. And whether or not they attract someone can then be future vetted to establish whatever they have to be worried about and think about, to then go about their fucking day. The amount of times in which I have actively had people approach me, literally as a content creator, and offer things like time, money, visits, booty calls, sexual tourism, move and change your life opportunities. Older men, older women, women way too fucking young for me. And I look like this! Me! Right here! This is me! And I'm pulling this! Safe to say, it will make you pull your fucking hair out. Now, of course, that's the influencer level. We're down here on the normal, regular niggas. Regular guys, regular girls. Social media was a mistake. That's all I can really say, bro. Social media was a mistake. The second we gave people the ability to try and holler and spit game at people in New Zealand all the way from fucking California, it was a wrap. Because you can never tell if anything's real. Let alone whether or not you can even be able to capitalize on it. Pining. Pining. P-I-N-I-N-G. Pining. A super mistake. Big. Huge.
And what can be done to disabuse people of such antiquated mindsets? We'll be getting to that eventually. But we're going to take the long way to get there, because I think it's more fun. So, I hope you enjoy the video.
Romantic subplot. Tap a thumbs up for Carl so he doesn't wobble and cup him titties around again. Don't you tell me what I can do with my man meat. I built this temple. That's funny. It's funny. We have fun here. I have fun here.
Sure, you've noticed, if you've spent any amount of time consuming fictional media, that there is a prevailing rule of thumb which generally asserts that the relationship statuses of the given male protagonist and a given female protagonist are inextricably linked. It's a narrative device commonly leveraged by the writer to create emotional depth, fast-track character development, and construct a compelling storyline. This is obviously true of the romance genre, but it can also be found with surprising frequency folded into the narratives of genres which are categorically less concerned with matters of the heart, to such a degree that it's actually got a name. The romantic subplot refers to a secondary storyline within a larger narrative that focuses on the development of a romantic relationship between two characters. Sometimes, romantic subplots are done quite well. For instance, the fake relationship that eventually becomes real between Katniss Everdeen and Peeta Mellark, concocted to keep them alive during the Hunger Games, is actually integral to the success of the Revolution arc against the Capitol, which Katniss endures across all 3 books. Sometimes, romantic subplots are done poorly. Take the forced romance between Natasha Romanoff and Bruce Banner, introduced in Age of Ultron, which has been criticized by audiences for feeling forced into the movie and detracting from the larger plot. But
I disagree with that, because I disagree with the modern audiences, because they feel that it's forced, but actually it's not. It's that it wasn't given enough time to be properly developed, because it was shoehorned in without a lot of time to develop it, other than as a mechanism to explain why Hulk can easily be sedated out of Banner. It actually gets more fleshed out, ironically enough, in She-Hulk than anything else. But, to speak on that, I'm sorry, I heard French Creole noises coming from the other room. And at some point in the future, I'm going to need to pause for like 5 minutes. I'll let you know when that happens. Anyways, the problem with romantic subplots is that, in terms of being a writing narrative point, the use of the romantic subplot only works in the context of bringing out character strengths and character ideals and personality types. So, in a high fantasy novel that then pivots into Satin Surrender, the emotional state of the female character matters a lot with why they choose to enter into a relationship with their chosen protagonist or antagonist or love interest of choice. Developing the relationship of, say, a villain who is romancing a kidnapped person that they stole not because they're interested in holding them for ransom, but in that they kidnapped them from their high fantasy kingdom because they looked miserable and bored, and they wanted to rescue them from that life of inequity, is different than the relationship of Katniss and Peeta, which is also different than the relationship, or that lack thereof, between, say, Percy Jackson and... I'm trying to remember the love interest of the Percy Jackson novels. All I can think of now when I see it is I can see Alexander Daddario, but now I can only be able to fucking remember the name of the black girl. The Athena chosen daughter. And Percy Jackson and Annabelle, thank you. Percy and Annabelle, fucking any romantic subplot where Link and Zelda's ever involved, which I guess includes the Breath of the Wild example. Hello, Lonel, you're in the middle of a versus chat. Strap in, get some popcorn. Versus, say, I saw an example in the chat a second ago, the love duragonal dodecahedron of The Legend of Korra, or the love dodecahedron of any of the Disney XD shows that were written more for shipping than they were for plot. The romantic subplot is supposed to be an opportunity to demonstrate character strengths and add depth to a character. The problem with the romantic subplot, though, is that the strength of the writer's ability to use it to flesh out the desires of both parties to then show the depth of intimacy between them is limited to how mature they treat the adaptation. So in the case of Legend of Korra, it's probably the worst use of romantic subplots, because why is Korra such a whore? There's no reason for her to be. The authors just wanted her sucking and fucking constantly. She jumps from Bolin, she jumps to forgetting the fucking Fire Nation girl, and bounces back between them romantically and unromantically. The amount of tension that should exist inside that friend group actually is she loved her friends that much. Her and the girl from It, the amount of tension and frustration and problems that come across as a part of the sexuality of Korra actually mirrors her counterpart in Aang's gang for the entirety of the original Atla, because you could have romantic intimacy and romantic desire while still having friendly and familial bonds, with or without the trope of fire-forged friends. You don't need to force sexual compunction where it need not be relevant. So, for example, older woman, younger man, she has no hips. She can't take not one stroke. Can that man, younger than this woman, let's say the age is 51 to 18, can that man be able to be in a romantic relationship with this woman? Yes. Does he need to have a sexual relationship with this woman? Does he need to carnally know her in order to establish and lock it in? No. Because unfortunately, the problem with this kind of writing and the problem with this kind of trope is that the way that people usually establish it is that it's like, what's that character? It is the character writing from I'm thinking of Dora. Yeah, I'm thinking of Dora. That comes from Dora of a person who believes the highest and most intimate thing that a person in a relationship can do to prove their love to someone is to have sex with them, when in fact that is not the most important thing or the most emotionally evocative thing a person can do in a relationship with someone. When you hear the phrase, the most fun you can have with your clothes on, it is a lie. There is more things that you can do in your life that is more intimate than putting your penis in someone's vagina or in their ass. Basically.
Sometimes, romantic subplots don't happen, despite what the audience might expect. Pacific Rim is a good example of this exact subversion of audience expectations. By the end of the movie, Maury and Beckett were not in a committed romantic relationship. They didn't even kiss at the end, where we would have expected them to, despite the fact that Maury and Beckett were drift compatible, trusted each other, and she saw him shirtless that once. How could they not be in a relationship by the 2-hour mark, you may be asking yourself.
I think one of the things that's important there in this context, especially when we're talking about movies, is that movies are books writ shorter. A 300-hour read has to somehow find a way to condense and hit all the plot points, especially if we're using modern conventions like the hero's journey, to get you all the information that you can be able to have to then understand the characters, who they are, and set them up, along with all of your plot points and setting events as dressing for the momentum of the vehicle, in order for you to get on the same page with the thing that they're concerned with and worried about. So, the example of using a love interest, nice butterfingers, Carl, of using a love interest to have a person be involved with your character and establishing that while they might have emotional and sexual tensions with each other, that does not mean a damn thing to whether or not they actually are fucking or care about each other. It's probably one of the biggest shortcuts that often gets abused, and that we as a society so fucking conditioned to media literacy. Whenever people don't see that trope played straight and then actively defied with, it makes them actively upset. But of course, we're talking about fiction, not reality.
It would seem to me that audiences everywhere have been conditioned to subscribe to a sort of emotional shorthand in the face of the barest hint of what could be mistaken for romantic subtext.
Yes, exactly!
Tilt your head, squint, and look really closely at it. And it's a prevailing disposition amongst audiences.
Oh lord, not the shipping wars.
If you have spent any significant amount of time on the internet, specifically in fandom communities, you may have come across the phenomena commonly referred to as shipping. Shipping online refers to the act of one wanting or supporting two individuals to be involved in a romantic relationship. People ship characters all the time for many reasons. Sometimes it's that subtle character chemistry you notice where there's just the barest crumb of attraction between two individuals. Sometimes it's an act of...
Their fingers touched, that means they must be fucking hardcore cream pie every single time, full force until the room stinks.
Creative expression to explore potential scenarios beyond established canon.
Head canon.
Sometimes people might personally identify with characters, projecting their own desires or experiences onto fictional beings.
Head canon. Also, I now need to step outside for at least 5 minutes. Bear with me, chat. Ow. How the fuck did I lock myself in my own bedroom? record show for the state that I in fact love my wife. Literally airdrop a care package. I forgot the last thing I said. No, I remember now. I'm scrolling back up. You people. Okay. Alright, chat. Inward Towers. Go. N-I. My favorite is trying to make a character gay when the studio explicitly forbids it and ends up accidentally writing a much more compelling plot that actually fits said character, and then nah, they're gay. I'm extremely better after 13 years. Why do you ask? What are you people even trying to spell? Nick's repping me. It's like a group for the dyslexic people trying to communicate. Nice save, Fatal. Thanks for coming to the Carl Talk. I stepped away for 1 second to look at smut, and this is what I come back to. What smut you looking at, woman? I'll be honest, anytime that I do ship, it's 100% straight. Other than that, I root for the characters and the current relationships that they're in. I think we're at a point now with writing, with fiction, and with the evolution of WhatsApp and fanfiction.net, where you can actually find some pretty decent writing from people who are not professionally trained. Because there are more people that are not, well, professionals in the scene that have a better capacity than writing than some of the people that are currently in the niches that they found themselves in. And I'm not just talking about short novellas either. The amount of work that's been put in on just Harry Potter and the Hunger Games and a knockoff book series that I'm pretty sure is inside the universe of, like, it's Harry Potter, but it's not. And my brain tells me it's the writer of Maximum Ride. I forget what it's called. And it's usually young adult fiction. So, the amount of works that I've found that have a depth of actual sincere writing, even if it's like a first draft and it's cringe, or it's anything comparative to what I've been writing on behalf of that $70 investment from Phantasma over my femdom writing. Still writing it, by the way. It's not Shinari Schnotter. It's clearly evocative of the Harry Potter's universe, but it's clearly not Harry Potter. I just can't remember what the fucking title was. I can visualize the novel front cover. I can't remember what the word was. For me, my first go-to would be like Vladimir Todd and Sprout. There's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different types of writing around that age range that have mature enough storylines that encourage something that otherwise would have been removed from, because most of the writing we instead get is like Hollywood and video game adjacent. Catching up to the chat. We're just as guilty as anyone of a ship, but it's usually when it's pretty explicitly described as being shown or being a thing. Nothing worse than two characters getting closer and closer to being together over the course of 10 books only end up with other people. I can actually speak to the end of that. It's probably the most annoying type of writing trope that I end up seeing, that when it gets jostled or defied is annoying as fuck. The only time that I will accept it is when the point of the story is that they were always star-crossed, and because they are with other people, that brings up exactly how tragic it is, because they are effectively stuck with other people, and that is why they are miserable. They're miserable because they are unrequited. Snakes, you asshole. Like Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings. Characters that realizing that they aren't meant for each other as partners can absolutely work as part of a story, with relationship not necessarily needing to be horrendously toxic. It just matters what the story is. I think that's a good example of what I'm thinking of. So, like, one of my favorite types of dramas that I will watch are, of course, the ones that center around the universe of Degrassi. And Degrassi in itself, especially as a Canadian soap opera, has had a lot of time to go from the evolution of the character's first utterance of fuck on Canadian television to literal world-renowned examples of great character writing, because they chose to go the route of hiring, at the time, teen actors to portray teen characters. No Dawson casting, no 26-year-old trying to play an 18-year-old. Literal people of the literal age and the literal age group portraying the characters that they are on camera. That level of acting led to a level of understanding where, no, actually I do get why Wheelchair Jimmy got put in a fucking chair. Actually, no, I do understand why Holly Jo is the way that she is. And why that one girl, whose name I can't remember, who was in that love triangle between herself and another guy, found herself potentially being pregnant. All of the teenage drama that would come from a literally who fucking cares and gives a shit type of storyline you could see written in front of you on TNT, CBS, or fucking Fox. Or worse, ABC Family. Curse you! Curse you, ABC Family, and the secret life of the American teenager! A storyline where common sense basically takes a back seat to emotional involvement makes a lot more sense, and thus plays out much more straight, and then can play with the tropes better than the alternative that ends up affecting them long term when it comes to planning out seasons and installments worth of character involvements. Shit, this shit is actually so pervasive that it even shows up in fucking franchises like Power Rangers. Although, passion play dramas aside, having a character want to go out with a character, get involved emotionally with a character, and then over the course of decent writing, the goal that they have was, actually, your chemistry is great. You two just fucking hate each other and would never work as a romantic coupling. And so they remain consensually hetero, non-romantic life partners, where they have characters that will then remark on the fact like, well, I thought she was your wife. Like, she's not my wife. Her? Yuck. And the reason why is because they've already worked out the overblown will they, won't they romantic tension, got it out of the way, developed them as characters, and now part of any romantic storyline is how does this third party entering into a relationship with one of these two characters deal with the fact that they basically have a level of connection that actually beggars the question that the scope of this conversation is entirely scoped around. How do they handle getting into a relationship with a person where there is literally no sexual competition from the mutual life partner, best friend, but they feel that there is because they still are jealous of this connection that they want to have with them? You could write them being okay with it. You could write them being angry and vengeful, and thus the relationship doesn't work because they are resentful. You could have them being resentful, but it's not because they're jealous. It's because they're jealous of the connection. They don't care that they have this relationship. They just want to have a similar intimate relationship with them. Which you can then write into, okay, the way that we'll make it intimate is that you're my wife and that's my best female friend. You need to get along with her, and then write a storyline about this couple having a baby. And the romantic friend explains to the woman, while she's like 6 months pregnant, fighting, scared that the reason he's disappearing is because they've been having an affair all this time. And she's like, no, no, no. And she either becomes a bridesmaid or becomes the godmother of the child, is holding her the hand there while he's trying to race to wherever he's going. There's mine DMing me right now. You could write a simple storyline where somehow, whatever the conflict is, because of a deeper conversation that they end up having, they then become responsible for helping carry the emotional weight. There's lots of different ways that you can end up writing the scenario in the situation. And it's probably one of the better kinds of examples. Like, you have a character that wants to have something similar to the connection of, say, the writing of Regular Show, for example. The writing of Regular Show, when it comes to romances, was literally more mature than the hipster version of that between Marceline and Bonnabelle, for example. Mordecai and Rigby, as well as, I guess, not Marceline, it's a different character with an M. The fucking Red J. Mordecai and Rigby, in his involvement with Eileen and CJ and the Red J, whose name I can't remember, the relationship between Muscle Man and his wife, their emotional involvement and the roller coaster of just Mordecai's dating life is Margaret, thank you, is miles more mature than the kind of dating relationships in between a character like Elliot Stabler and, I'm forgetting Mishka Hargitay's character in Law & Order SVU. That was a recent example of a will they won't they that they tried to use to drum up ratings, since Kristen Maloney was able to come back and argue for his fucking contract, which was the basis on why he left that series in the first place. The original versions in the beginning run of SVU was probably the better case example of Elliot and Olivia. Thank you. Olivia Benson. That shit should be hard grown in my goddamn brain. I watch more of that show than Jay has. The original emotional connection between Elliot and Olivia, even if at some point in time before Elliot was married, they might have fooled around a bit as like partners. Seasons, I don't know, fucking season 1 through whenever Elliot's character gets written off the show, before he does his death scar rolls, you could have never told me that they, at one point in time in the past, didn't like have a mutual date and like emotions flared and shit, but it distracted them from being able to work together on cases and getting shit done. If not, the reason why Olivia's his partner is because Elliot's hothead status means that Stabler has to be with someone like Benson to fucking straighten him out and keep on the straight and narrow, because he'd be prone to breaking the rules too much to try and get his man. Versus that piss poor fucking will they won't they fucking rough sex baiting ass bullshit they tried to run like 2 or 3 months back, if it wasn't literally last month. That fucking garbage is so trash. Trash! Because of course they were shipped together for the longest time. But it's less about will they, won't they, and whether or not, you know, do they actually have chemistry. But of course, it's Dick Wolf, and it's melodrama, with ripped from the headline news. These niggas are not watching to see this character get dicked down. Or anytime they would ever have written a character like Abby Shudo for NCIS. Or the female partner that gets killed that is friends with the guy who was that one character from Dark Angel who was eyes only. I can't remember that actor's name off the top of my head. The back and forth tension between people. It's not like, say, the shipping that would happen between a character like House and Cuddy. Anyways, I digress. I almost got up to what his chat is. I know that it can be done right, but when you edge someone for so long about it, the blue balls is horrendous. Yes. The biggest problem with shipping is blue balling. In book form. Because when you write the books, you have to write them in the terms of them being inside of the same time periods. And with the evolution of the time period, say the relationship between Harry and Hermione. That is probably the best example of a chance to write a good pairing that veered off into left field. Because what do you mean he got together with fucking Ginny? Doesn't make sense. Or rather, it does not follow through with the kind of emotional involvement that you would expect between these friends. But of course, it also has some very good examples of character writing that demonstrates that actually inside of the world of Harry Potter, the kind of relationships that you could expect there to be are based off of a couple of things that are better than most. So for example, I believe that the best pairing for Harry Potter was actually Luna Lovegood. And not just because of the movie actress that they pulled for her, but specifically the writing of the character. Harry being someone who is around so much serious shit that he needs somebody who understands him on a more spiritual level. While Hermione can match him in intelligence and in charisma and in leadership, that is not his best pairing. Ginny doesn't make any goddamn sense. And I'm pretty sure is one of those J.K. Rowling choices that she would retcon if she had the ability to. Just like she tried to retcon Hermione being a black girl. And in terms of Ron's pairing with Hermione, it makes sense in that the doofus of the group actually has hidden depths that can only be noticed by the smartest person in the group. Because he's the most forgotten person that usually gets written off and ignored. Catching up. Actually wrote for two characters that I like breaking up because it made sense with who they were in the story at large, but the next installment had one added as gay, making zero sense. For many years I had the mentality, do these people get together? I'd look ahead and see if they do, and if they don't, I'll make sure not to expect that type of relationship. The excuse in the post-show. Let's tap my chat some forward. Here we go. Excuse post-show is that it was always the intent, but then countering with why was the backup plan much more compelling. Like, I think for examples like that, since that's pretty much the case with people like J.K. Rowling, because her politics are leading the writing of her show. The interpersonal politics of trying to levy relationship norms into writing can actually pretty much set the standard on people's emotional maturity and acceptance of different types of pairings. Because unfortunately, people are not as learned when it comes to dating environments as they are now than they could be in the past or in the future, simply because they are not on the same page with everyone's desires. This is very clear now with transgenderism politics, depicting that this character can only be considered respectful if they are seen as attractive by the hottest person, who basically is just going to write off the fact that this character that is coming up to them is a fucking wee-high leprechaun who calls themselves queer. It's like, okay, that's cool, they're transgender. But when they are touching their lips like this, as they pick them up to then kiss them, they're straight as hell there. Straight as an arrow here. And it'll be going in straight when they bend them over. Boom. And Mary's comment on Hollywood writing nosediving is actually a good example of this. Because for all of these fucking shows that exist, that ship themselves as drama, Riverdale, Degrassi, at least Degrassi since Degrassi Next Class, Riverdale, Degrassi, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Kissing Booth 1 through 3, Big Mouth I don't think I can include in this, simply because Big Mouth is what happens when you give Nick Kroll Jew money to simply make as many jokes non-stop as he can, which even that got cut down, because then they fuck up Jenny Slate's character and make her feel like she's not allowed to explore what that could look like. All of the drama, oh god, I almost forgot the fact that we're watching Interview with the Vampire, and this is a perfect case example of that too. A very good example where meaningful character study could be discovered and explored, not just through the shipping of characters, but through the connections of those characters with those people. What ends up happening every time is they perceive the extremes and the many tags and modifiers they attach onto the characters is the same thing as deep involvement. And it's not enough. It's like he's speaking gay Latin. I don't know what he's talking about. So, Interview with the Vampire. The relationship between Lestat and de Leoncourt was never homosexual. It was a man looking for death. He was offered the choice of death. He took it. He then became emotionally involved with bringing back and saving a little girl, and then, through surviving with Claudia, became emotionally and toxically attached to that abuser and user who did not appreciate the sanctity of life, and the only thing that he connected with was a hatred of the mortal world. Going into the Interview with the Vampire, you make him gay. You explicitly make the relationship gay. You disrespect the memory of the works of not just one, but pretty much every single book that they will adapt in their immortal universe under Anne Rice's books. You got him kissing another man's hand, sucking on the thumb of, and then also kissing another man in the company of a courtesan. And you go from a merciful dark gift to literally, Lord, lift us up where he belongs, in my butt. And to echo horror, Louis, Louis, let me come inside you, Louis, Louis. You like dick and balls, Louis. Don't fuck her, fuck me. You spend all this time choosing to write things. I could excuse the black rewrite because, you know, it's as lame as the Davros cannot be a evil villain, a weird child type shit. But you force people to watch a bullshit, non-existent love connection, even if closer to the Armand relationship, it would have been considered gay by modern standards. You sacrifice good writing over other qualities of the character on the effective altar of shipping, and you ruin the concept outright, wholesale. Where it feels like a character is at the mercy of another character's sexuality, and they are incapable of handling their problems, were sex not to be involved. Not to mention how they ruined Claudia. Not even to mention how they fucked up Daniel Malloy. Not even to mention how they fucked up Interview with the Vampire, or The Vampire of the Stat, or any of these versions of these characters that they're going to put on screen. You think that should be the next movie night interview, like the original Interview with the Vampire? I'll ask Jay if she wants to sit in on it. She'll have plenty of things that she will want to talk about, just in comparison between the two. But I think we have caught up to where I was gone, so I'm going to go backwards 10 seconds, and we're going to continue on from there, because we have 2 videos to get through. Well, it depends on when the 15th falls. If the 15th falls on a Saturday, then it means you'll be able to come. If it does not fall on a Saturday, right. Moving backwards.
Sometimes there's just the barest crumb of attraction between two individuals. Sometimes it's an act of creative expression to explore potential scenarios beyond established canon.
Okay, good. Cool.
Sometimes people might personally identify with characters, projecting their own desires or experiences onto fictional beings. Sometimes it creates a sense of community amongst fans to be able to connect with others over shared enthusiasm.
Shared projection and delusion in headcanon.
And sometimes it can be done as a form of reflection for underrepresented individuals in the media. Whatever.
Representation is joy! Everybody turns into Kim Belair. Everybody gonna turn into Kim Belair. And I feel that the 5th one is the worst one.
Whatever the reason for it, where there is shipping, there is almost certainly shipping wars. No, we are not talking about the 2012 reality television series on the transportation of bulk items. Although, I'm not sure how I feel about the fact that a logistics reality show got more seasons than Teen Titans did, but I digress. Shipping wars refers to a situation where there are verbal arguments between people who have different opinions about romantic relationships between characters of a show, book, movie, etc. And the example that Urban Dictionary uses is actually the Robin Raven versus Robin Starfire ship war. For the uninitiated, during its heyday, the original 2003 animated cartoon Teen Titans was popular within online shipping communities, pitting fans of the Robin Starfire pairing and fans of the Robin Raven pairing against each other. The Robin Starfire pairing is inherited from the 1980s comic run, where a romantic relationship between Robin and Starfire's comic counterparts had been previously canon, making the budding romance of the cartoon seemingly inevitable. But the Robin Raven ship kind of snuck up on people a little bit, beginning with the release of the Season 1 episode Nevermore, which teased audiences of the eventual Trigon arc, gaining traction in Season 3 with the episode Haunted and psychic bond that ensued between the pair, and culminating in Season 4 as the series kicked off the Trigon arc with Robin rescuing a depowered Raven from the grip of her demon father. At the risk of starting a shipping war in my own comments section, it would appear to me that at no point in the series do the creators telegraph to the audience that there is to be a romantic entanglement between the half-demon and the boy wonder. And yet, the shipping community clung onto those scraps of vulnerable intimacy like starving children unsure of when they'd get their next meal.
There's a reason for that, but I'm gonna let you finish first.
Caused quite the skirmish online, particularly with other shippers whose own pairings were at odds with the Rob Ray ship. And this whole platonic versus relationship controversy that rears its ugly head in fandoms, it's a pattern that's replicated itself in media time and time again. Harry and Hermione from the Harry Potter series
I was just talking about this. I did not rewatch this content.
Are a good example of a platonic friendship ship that fandoms have historically rallied against in fiction and in heated debates online. Katara and Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender is a good example of fandoms rallying against established canon in favor of an even more juicy enemies to lovers fanship. Roy Mustang and Riza Hawkeye from Full Metal Alchemist is a bit more ambiguous in its portrayal, as nowhere during the course of the anime nor manga run do the Colonel and Lieutenant actually engage in anything that's overtly romantic. In fact, Roy is out there messing around with other women, while people are insisting that he's secretly in love with Riza Hawkeye. But their proximity to each other, their history, their strong emotional ties, and the ambiguity this presents the audience with lends the Roy fans enough material to make a compelling argument that they are secretly, romantically intertwined. And I know I'm ripping this apart, but like, I am one of those in the camp that believes that this ship is canon. Like, secretly canon. Like, it's ambiguous, but I totally, 100% believe, I am bought into the Roy question. I think it's yes. But it's not confirmed, and we don't know, so I could go on, but we would be here for years. As you can see, there...
So, for the people concerning things like Teen Titans, whenever it comes to something from Marvel, especially now, since they are fully transed out on the gay question, which I should say is actually the lesbian question, Runaways is much easier for this because Nico is a character that just you can do anything with. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is a character you could just literally do anything with, and I'm pretty sure on the run that they did for the Marvel Comics that was in during my high school years, the Super Skrull chooses to present feminine when it could otherwise be masculine because of that. But the concerns of most things that have to do with cape shit, big three cape shit, Image Comics, Marvel, and DC, most of the people doing those shippings are grown adults, and of the children and of the teenagers that are also in on those shipping wars, it's because it's the first time they ever saw something like that, so they latched onto it immediately. It's like being a person who grew up in the 90s watching Boy Meets World, and you grew up watching Cory and Topanga. Watching those characters connect to each other the same way you could, the fucking back and forth, will they, won't they relationship of Tommy Oliver and fucking Cat Hillard. And, any other will they, won't they ships that happen in any Passion Play story that was created for a children's audience. For me, the Kino is, of course, Time Force, because I never shut the fuck up about the goddamn show. Every example of a ship, although in the case of Time Force, that shit was not just implied, it was the fact that the only reason they could not have tongue was because they did not want to put the kissing on the television. And all of these examples of shows with fictional elements, that you could have people involved with people. The writing between Wes Collins and, I forget her whole name, but it's supposed to basically be a play on words of the original Red. But between him and Jen, it's the kind of relationship that if you were then just say, no, actually, they don't get together in the end, or they don't have a mutual understanding that if they were not if they were not, in this case, not star-crossed, but time-crossed lovers, where Wes has to live in the past in order for his descendant Alex to exist in the future, where the distance between how she grows apart from Alex increases the closer she gets to Wes, is itself a writing convention to demonstrate how bad Alex was for her and how toxic the culture of the year 3000 was on the concept of 2001. That kind of scenario for shipping and writing was literally integral to the plot. In fact, the love story between Nadira and the Blue Ranger was necessary for understanding that Rancic and his daughter Nadira are just mutants. They're not monsters, they're just mutants. Technically, all of the mutants are just people. They're not just monsters of the day that get destroyed and you forget about them. They are citizens that are supposed to be tried under a justice system. And by having an arc that ultimately gets used every time, or at least not anymore because they fucking killed that franchise dead in the water, would be used to demonstrate the internal character depths of those characters. So I'm remembering the robot general who was the scientist that was brutalized and nearly murdered and killed by Rancic, ends up being the person responsible for a lot of the plot development in the back half of the last course. The entire full circle concept that is necessary at those ships is that you're dealing with people, not dealing with the throwaway monster of the week. To the point that you probably have what I will continue to say is the best moment in character writing, not just in a kids show, but in fiction, period. Having a person bring themselves to the consequence of surrendering themselves to a form of law enforcement because he realizes that his brutality would have led to him killing his own family member is a literal connection and a literal consequence point of good character writing. Because even though some shows have filler arcs and filler episodes, because they're working off of a script that they're transliterating and they're trying to work off of a foreign product and they're trying to make their own for an American product, they spent all of the time that they did making any type of filler, bringing it to understanding the characters as they are. All of that, from Cory Topanga to then their spin-off show, Girl Meets World, and the similarities between their characters there, and characters coming back and echoing themselves for people like Ryder Strong. I don't think they ever have Will Friedle on. I don't think they ever had Will Friedle reprise a character. But having these characters that are pretty much mainstays from the original Boy Meets World cast, as well as all the lessons that could be taught by Feeney, all of that is in the same wavelength. It's the same broadband. Because it doesn't just deal with relationships, it deals with connections. Anyways, getting lost. Focus.
There is quite a range of credibility here when it comes to shipping, and there are so many more examples of otherwise platonic or seemingly platonic character relationships being reframed by the fans to fit a more romantic narrative. And you would think that my pointing out these instances lessens my argument from the previous section of this video. That simply because people see potential romance between a male and a female platonic character, where there canonically isn't any romance, supports the notion that men and women can't be just friends. Because people are biologically primed to mash their body parts together with the nearest compatible bits, and hence of course projecting that tendency into fiction. That legitimizes the thing that I am trying to disprove. Case closed, right? Right, we will. Bet you thought. Oh my god. I hate that I am the one who might be introducing my audience to the concept of gay shipping, but it's important to my thesis, so it must be done. At great personal sacrifice. Your personal sacrifice, not mine. Slash is the word used in fanfiction to denote homosexual pairings. Usually male on male, sometimes female on female. It's a term that's often interchangeable with yaoi or yori, which are the Japanese equivalent. The gendered Japanese equivalent, I might add. The term slash finds its origins in the 1960s Star Trek community, of all places, with the plethora of Kirk/Spock stories which emerged during the time. These stories were usually authored by female fans of the series to be distributed privately amongst friends and community, and would eventually spread to other fandoms, such as Starsky and Hutch, Blake 7, and The Professionals. In the current day, you can find buckets of slash fiction all over the popular fanfiction websites, like ff.net and AO3. Slash fanfiction.
She mentioned AO3. And she got sharp. You've opened up a fucking wormhole. You shouldn't have mentioned AO3, but she did. Now there will be more fucking degenerates in the streets.
Has been an unwavering phenomena, as shippers in the current day will take any morsel, any crumb of emotional intimacy as license, nay, and obligation to ship individuals who are of the same sex.
It's more than an obligation. They do it simply because they want to see what would happen. They take the fucking idea, and much like myself writing what I'm writing, they will simply put situations in situations because they saw it once, they thought the way it was done there was trash, so they will now write every dynamic the way that they thought that it should be written, and they will end up with fucking novels of fire no matter what they end up writing. It's scary. I'm terrified of these kinds of people.
Ad nauseam. Which brings me to one of the oldest surviving slash pairings in all of history. The Iliad is an ancient Greek epic poem attributed to Homer and is regarded as one of the oldest enduring pieces of literature. The central character of the Iliad is the Greek hero Achilles, known as the greatest of all Greek warriors. Achilles was the son of Thetis and Pelo, the king of Thea, and a member of the famed Argonauts. Another character of note within the Iliad is the Greek hero Patroclus. There is a substantive amount of mainstream fandom shipping, or what some might be calling academic conjecture, which analyzes the nature of the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, and has become the subject of much discourse within the classics community. Some scholars suggest that their relationship is nothing beyond a profound friendship, with Patroclus acting as Achilles' close confidant and advisor, while others have taken this relationship to suggest a more romantic or homoerotic relationship, despite that not having been outright stated within the ancient text. Regardless of what
There are multiple instances where, if you take any example of anything that ever has to do with portrayals of characters, Lore Olympus, Epic the Musical as written by Jorge and all of his social media friends, any modernized version that's going to be butchered because they're not willing to go all the way with what they're choosing to write, or they only go halfway, to the consideration that they will go to, say, Disney's example to make a modernized Percy Jackson without a white character portraying a white character, and instead having all of these people portraying these modern day interpretations, plus or minus the message. They're all interconnected in the same way. Boy Twink, is he actually fucking everybody in the crew and getting fucked, or is he just meant to be the character that's supposed to emotionally hurt when he gets killed? Unfortunately.
What can't be fallen, it's a safe bet to say that Achilles and Patroclus are close in the Iliad. At least until Patroclus is killed. I mean, after all, one does not simply go on a vengeful rampage to decimate a prince of Troy in single combat, only to deny him his funeral rites, drag his corpse around behind one's chariot back to camp, and leave his body to rot over the death of a mere acquaintance. But then again, the point of the Iliad is to tell the story of Achilles, the Greek hero whose rage and vengeful spirit brings about ruin, as a cautionary tale. Dear viewers, anything less than an overreaction would be out of character. Suffice to say, the Greeks are an interesting case study when it comes to love and relationships. And there's no better way to demonstrate this complexity than through a thorough linguistic analysis. Harken back with me, dear viewer, to the previous year's Valentine's Day special, where we discussed the triangular theory of love. How love is comprised of three key components, those being intimacy, passion, and commitment, and how the different combinations of these elements result in different kinds of love. Well, it turns out that this idea of multiple kinds of love is not an idea original to Robert Sternberg. The ancient Greeks recognized 6 different philosophical relationship terms to conceptualize those relationship styles we would generally use the word love for. This word, agape, notes a universal type of love, such as the love for strangers, nature, or God. It's a concept similar to Christian charity or modern-day altruism, a general sense of, as Thomas Aquinas puts it, to will the good of another. The word eros in Greek refers to a sexual or passionate love and is the root word from which the term erotic is derived. The word philia in Greek carries the connotation of a close personal bond between friends on the level of close siblings almost. The word storge is exclusively used for familial love, like the unconditional love between parents and their children, or that relationship bond between brothers and sisters. The word philautia is a love reserved for oneself, the modern equivalent being self-esteem, or a healthy appreciation for oneself. And the word xenia is a word that refers to the Greek concept of guest friendship, which can be defined as the hospitality relationship between host and guest, the social expectations and responsibilities that come with each of those roles, rooted in generosity, gift exchange, and reciprocity. To the ancient Greeks, xenia is a very important moral obligation, and I would venture to guess modern-day Greeks as well, if my in-laws are any indication. So you see, if I were to say the words my love, to the Greeks I could be referring to friend, family, the world, or my lover, and no one would be able to tell without proper context. But if I were to say storgemu, it's very clear, based on the word choice I'm using, that I'm talking about a family member and not a lover. Because saying storgemu to my husband is a little weird. It's a lot of weird. Anyway, and honestly, going through this whole section and putting it together, I am beginning to understand why other people hate the English language. I mean, I still hated going through all of the declensions in ancient Greek when I was studying it in college, but I am beginning to understand some people's grievances with the English language. Not all of them, but some of them.
I would say that the problem between the cultures, because this is a cultural problem, because we're stupid Americans. We have a convention in dating where before somebody can be a romantic partner, they have to first be a friend. And then, before they were a friend, they have to be a perfect stranger. And we say, quote, that she's not just my husband or my wife. She's not just the mother of my children. She's my best friend. She's my confidant. She wears multiple hats, which in other languages has to translate with words that are hard to pronounce, or very annoying sentences that you have to manage, because the collective word and the conjunction of those words ultimately means that the concepts that we're trying to get people to understand, getting a person to understand that I love my romantic partner with a similar level of intensity to which I respect the autonomy of the feminine friends I have in my life, and that they can be equal to each other, and neither betrays them, is actually the key crux example of why the question, can men be friends with women, even exists. Like, that right there in its whole, without even needing to bring up social examples from America, is pretty much the base problem. Now this has to be the cultural difference, because every race and every ethno-religious status and ethno-topography status all have their own problems. So say, the way in which you have to be able to navigate this in Japan is not the way you would navigate it in Greece. The way that you would navigate this in Italy is not the way that you would need to navigate it in America. The way you navigate it in America is not the way you'd have to navigate it in South Korea, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on.
Quick count of all the words.
I clicked the one.
quick count of all the words for love across all possible declensions in the Iliad finds that agape appears about 63 times, philia 5 times, and eros 6 times in the entirety of that Homeric work. But you know what word does not appear in the Iliad? Or the Odyssey, for that matter? Blue. The ancient Greeks, they have all these fun little words to describe the different philosophical forms of love. But they didn't have a word which directly translates to blue. How do we know this? Well, we can speculate based off its utility, or the lack thereof, in the same ancient texts that we were just analyzing. In 1858, the eventual 4-time British Prime Minister and fellow classics enthusiast, William Gladstone, published his book entitled Studies on Homer and the Homeric Age. The third volume of this publication included an original thesis on color perception in ancient Greece, suggesting that the ancient Greeks categorized colors mainly in terms of light-dark contrasts rather than hue. This conclusion was supported by a 30-page statistical analysis of color used by Homer both in the Iliad and the Odyssey, far more sophisticated than my quick little count of the various forms of love from the earlier section. Gladstone found the color black, or melas, and all its various declensions to be used 170-odd times. Likewise, white was used 100 times, give or take. Violet around 6 times, yellow less than 10 times, red about 13 times, and purple with all its compounds and kindreds about 23 times. But not blue. I mean, sure, now the Greeks have a word for blue. It's pronounced bleu, but it's never used in the entirety of the massive ancient texts, not even in places where the word would reasonably be applicable. The sky is, as Homer describes it, starry, broad, great, both iron and copper in color, but never blue. Likewise, the sea is oddly enough described in a similar manner to oxen. Yes, those oxen. It's described as wine-colored, not blue. And that, we can conclude, is because the Greeks did not have a word specifically for the color blue. In fact, this is not a trait unique to the ancient Greeks. Indian epics from 4 millennium ago, ancient Chinese writings, Icelandic texts, the Hebrew Bible, and many others fail to use the color blue as a descriptor for things we would otherwise describe as blue. But they all definitely had words for black, white, and red at the very least. A study of color language development across a wide array of cultures throughout time suggests, with a high degree of reliability, that there is a predictive pattern for color term acquisition in human languages. Starting first with dark cool and light warm, or what we would regard as black and white, because they are the most useful distinctions to make, and therefore the most immediate acquisition for any culture. Next is red as the decided follow-up color, given its likeness to blood and reliable appearance in human expression through flushing. Then either green or yellow, and then both green and yellow, so as to better distinguish between ripe and unripe fruits. Then blue, as well as, later on, brown, then finally pink, purple, orange, or gray as the 7th color acquisition. Weibo, why are you giving us a lesson in human color acquisition? Well, because I don't know if you're aware of this, dear viewer, but while we as a human species create and leverage our language on a whim to describe and categorize our perception of the world, language can also very much affect the way in which we perceive the world. In English, there are 11 different color categories, including a category that specifically distinguishes the color blue. So when I show you an assortment of colors, assuming you're not colorblind, you can reasonably differentiate the blue hue from the green hue. Conversely, the Himba language has only 5 color categories. Sarandu, used for reds, oranges, pinks, browns, and some yellows. Bambu, used for some greens, reds, beiges, and shades of yellow. Zuzu, used for most dark colors, including black, dark red, dark purple, and dark blue. Vappa, used for lighter colors like yellow and white. And Buru, used for greens and blue without distinction. And it turns out that the Himba people would take longer than an English speaker to distinguish the blue from the green on this color array. However, the Himba people can more easily distinguish between 2 similar greens, while the rest of us miserable single green category having people struggle. All of this is to say that color naming is critical in shaping color categories and enhancing categorical perceptions. This conversation that we've just had is a very specific, hyper-focused example that demonstrates the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which suggests that the language a person speaks influences their thought process, which I recognize is way too vague to mean a whole lot to anyone, so allow me to be more specific as I posit my own thesis, hypothesis, theory thing. That being that the more categories that you have at your disposal, the better you can distinguish between two similar but disparate concepts. So
Yeah, I can agree with that.
let's take this idea and apply it to our emotions, namely, love.
My emotions! My emotion!
Alexithymia, in simple terms, means without words for emotions. It's when a person has significant difficulty experiencing, identifying, feeling, sourcing, and expressing emotions.
Don't get confused. She's going someplace with this. I know where she's going. You only feel confused because you missed the rest of the video up till now, Ebony. Just stay with it. I will summarize and recap when we get there.
Occurs at approximately 10% of the general population, and in 50 to 80% of the autism spectrum disorder, or ASD population. Normative male alexithymia is the low-level version of alexithymia, often present in those who tend to conform more to specific cultural norms of hypermasculinity. For example, restriction of emotional expressions such as the oft-parroted "real men don't cry" saying, demonstration of status or toughness, sentiments of anti-femininity, and presenting as always in control and unburdened by vulnerability. And despite what the name suggests, normative male alexithymia can be present in both males and females, although it does occur with higher frequency in the former group than the latter. And at least part of this can be attributed to how people are socialized. One such integral social interaction is that of the parents with their children growing up, and the difference in the use of emotion words exhibited by parents to their daughters versus their sons. A difference which actually influences the rate of emotional language acquisition by the child, with daughters demonstrating higher levels of emotional language acquisition than sons within a 2.5 years time difference. I have a whole separate, currently 17-page script dealing with male emotionality and how social and cultural influences can greatly affect emotionality, sitting in my project backlog, just waiting for me to finish writing it, so I won't bore you to death with the deep dive on the topic just quite yet. But I would like to focus on one of the main characteristics of alexithymia, that being a difficulty in identifying feelings and distinguishing those feelings from bodily sensations of emotional arousal. Emotional arousal, you'll find, is a state of heightened physiological activity and strong emotions. For example, in the case of anxiety, an elevated heart rate can mean that you are undergoing some amount of anxiety, but it can also be a symptom of intense cardio, excitement, sexy times. However, a tendency of those with panic disorders to mistaken normal physical sensations, like that elevated heart rate, as a symptom of anxiety, and consequently trigger a panic attack. Now, to bring it all together, if you'll recall, we established in the earlier section that the more categories you have at your disposal, the better you can distinguish between two similar but disparate concepts. This, as we discussed, is true of colors, which are ultimately just a visual perception of light waves on a visible spectrum received by the retina, detected by the optic nerve, and interpreted by the brain to affect our visual perception of the thing. But even though you may encode the light waves for blue and orange in your brain, denied an adequate category for the description of that hue on the light spectrum, you may struggle to differentiate between blue and green or orange and red. So, if that is the case for colors, why would that not also be the case for emotions? Love, any of our emotions, are ultimately the result of sensory input from all of our senses, which are passed through chemical transfer to the limbic system, interpreted by the brain, causing our hypothalamus to trigger physiological responses through the rest of the body. And so, it would stand that if a person is given a limited set of categories a person can fill in their lifetime, that the only kind of love a man can have toward a person of the feminine persuasion is a motherly love, a sisterly love, or a loverly love, and she's not the sister, and she's not the mother, then the natural category to place her in your own head, if you have any sort of warm fuzzies toward her, would be lover, or potential lover. And if you've never been given a reason to develop the emotional intelligence to better distinguish between disparate conceptions of love, whether they be eros, agape, philia, storge, the works, then you're never questioning that categorical system. And every single woman outside the family becomes just another potential fuck buddy. The reverse is possible with women, obviously. The fanfiction community and all its pairings and shipping wars are evidence of this phenomenon enough. It's just apparently less obvious on a real-world stage.
So, basically, what she's laying out is the concept behind the question, which is much more fleshed out with examples based in Greek language, that I put forth simply, which is, what is the reason why people believe that men and women cannot be friends? And then it's because in escape and in lack of any perpetual information that demonstrates and defines why this man or this woman is outside of the exception and the rule, must be because they are special, or the people in question are lying, because they do not have enough social context and enough comparative categories to factor in the information that the reason men can be friends with women and women can be friends with men is because they do not have a personal reference to when they are friendly with their friends, and the context in how they talk to and socialize with others means they don't have the categorical lens from which they have the framework to understand relationships. So, for a man that says, I ain't got no female friends, I fuck my friends, he has never had a position of familial friendship. In other words, C.S. Lewis, I need you. Those of you that get tired of seeing this quote and this quote know exactly what she's talking about. It's just that the way that she set it up there was different than how you usually see it. Raise your hand if you recognize this image. Let's do 1 and 2. Press 1 if you recognize this image. Press 2 if you don't recognize this image. This, in a nutshell, is the basis on which many people crash themselves on the rock of. The quote itself comes from C.S. Lewis. Those who cannot conceive of a friendship as a substantive love but only a disguise or elaborate eros betray the fact that they have never had a friend. Or, a much less used but a more recognizable to me example, because I've read too many C.S. Lewis books in school. Friendship is the greatest of worldly goods. Certainly me is the chief happiness of life. If I had to give a piece of advice to a young man about a place to live, I should say sacrifice almost everything to live where you can be near your friends. The quotes of C.S. Lewis on friendship is something we literally see every single time. We see Pixar Disney films, where they are now having, once again, the newest installment of the first openly gay Disney Pixar character. The most common example being one film unironically featuring, technically not Greek, but Italian, Disney Pixar's Luca. This thing. There are other examples that exist, some which are more notable, being examples like Ponyo and, say, Castle in the Sky. But no matter if it is something like Luca, or something like Ponyo, or something like Castle in the Sky, the repeating of the narrative theme is that regardless of a romantic involvement, you have characters that are able to understand and come to terms with the fact that they feel something stronger than passive-like, but don't necessarily have to be specifically solely sexual in carnal nature. But it's something a lot more kismet. And that familial basis of our general ideas of love means that a lot of people don't have the framework in which to talk about relationships because they have never had the relationships in question that they're trying to define. So for a touchless, kissless virgin, where their only context to sex is porn, it is the same as a girl who is burnt out on relationships, that she assumes every man must want to have sex, and then when she meets the one asexual in her town who is an ace in the hole, she has no ability to understand why he frustrates the shit out of her, other than when he finally tells her, well, no, I don't have a romantic interest in you, you're my friend. She can't believe it because, no, I've never had a friend, every man I ever been with used me for sex. That's it. That was the entire setup of her point. Hopefully that helps for people like Ebony. But that's it. In conclusion, in totality, as TDLDR, if you have never had a friend, and you've never been able to be in a situation where you have friends, or you've never been in a situation where this particular dynamic has never appeared to you, you would not know how to define it, let alone how to categorize it. So you would default to the only example that you all know. And the only example that we all know carnally as fucking animals is fucking procreation. It is not a breeding kink, it is your biological imperative to survive and keep the species going. And that is half the reason why these answers come out the way that they do, whenever they do people on the street. But it's also, you know, someone puts a microphone in your face, and they're like, hey yo, try to summarize human experience in a sentence, and you want to take one word over a paragraph. That's not as viral. People remember the virality, or the stupidity of the virality, than they do the actual emotions. So every single time we see a person on Twitter say something fucking stupid, we're more likely to hit them with the friendship quote about the fact that they've never had a friend, rather than explaining the reason why they are the way they are is not the equivalent of Rance walking up to a fucking female that's saying, but Rance, porn star debonair, can't we just be friends? And Rance just unzips his pants and it's like, this is how I make friends. Now you're friends and the mother of my child.
There is great power in language. The more language you have at your disposal to describe the world around you, the more complexly you can conceptualize reality. The more language you know, the easier it becomes to predict outcomes and commune with other humans. Language separates us from a base existence. Language can shape how we believe, think, feel, perceive, and act. In the right order, our words can tell stories, describe our surroundings, instruct others, and it has the power to change hearts and minds. Unfortunately, the English language doesn't have an easy shorthand way to differentiate the love felt between platonic friends from the love of an intimate, long-term sexual partner in the same way that the Greeks did. A distinction that's unfortunately complicated by social roles and expectations held over from a more traditional time. These relationships are further overwhelmed by the amount of will they won't they storylines and friends to lovers trope representations in fictional media, which have been fed to the public ad nauseum. But in this,
I would argue that the reason why there's so many is that there are people who are chasing their own formulation of those relationships. Because the most common writing advice that is given to people in creative writing is write what you know. And I know way too many people who have longing and unrequited love over people that have lived full lives and who experience an extreme spectrum of conversational differences between themselves and others, let alone what happens when people have good conversation.
This moment, right now, dear viewers, as you're watching the screen and listening to my voice, we are the most advanced humanity has ever been, both technologically and intellectually. Why then can we not also strive to be the most advanced linguistically as well? I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
And that is the end of that video. So ultimately, rather than just show you clips and images and then come to a non-roundabout answer, what she posits is that it is possible for us to learn more language and thus learn more ways to define the things that we're trying to get across. Because you should not get so stuck up on the question, then you should be focused on the result of what comes with good preparation, understanding of what to look forward to and how to navigate them. Which now brings us to the other side of that thread. From one end of having philosophical conversations to modern relationships are so messed up.
The modern relationship is...
God, it's so loud.
The modern relationship is struggling. But why? How did things become so messy with dating? Have you ever seen those videos on social media of old couples being interviewed about when they met and how they made it so far? I've always loved watching those videos for two reasons. First, how the relationship started and progressed is almost always too bizarre to believe. Like this older gentleman named Albert will say, "Well, I saw Betsy from across the neighborhood swimming hole when I was 16 and I knew right then and there she was the one for me." And Betsy will say, "Well, I played hard to get, but I knew I loved him from day one." And then the old guy goes off to war or something, and the day he comes back, the first thing they do is get married, and they've lived happily ever after ever since. Second, and most importantly, it means that real love actually does exist in ordinary life as ordinary days pass us by, and not just in some acted scenes behind a screen. Whenever I look at the comments of videos like these, I see people longing for what they have, but I also see people asking the big question: why does it feel like this never happens anymore? Why do modern relationships feel so screwed up? I think there are a few reasons, but to me, the reason that stands above the rest is social media. Yeah, what a shocker. I think a lot of these problems with modern relationships begin before a relationship has even started. Social media has taught us...
He said something correct, but where he's about to go with it is going to be very annoying.
That there is a measuring stick when it comes to your capacity to be loved. And if we haven't reached the right threshold, it's pretty pointless to even try.
What does that sound like? It sounds like if you don't get over a certain point that you're not a person? Thanks, so math.
The general public is really quick nowadays to intensely criticize others on social media for their negative features and traits. I think...
And there's a reason why. We'll get to there when he gets to a point where I can exacerbate.
When we take in too much of that negativity, it changes how our little pea brains work. And over time, we end up convincing ourselves that those nasty criticisms we hear are normal and valid, which can absolutely cause us to criticize ourselves in the same way. That does a lot of damage to someone who doubts they are capable of being loved at all. I use this example because I've been there. When I was younger, I was the really skinny guy, and I was pretty insecure about it. People always used to tell me how small I was, and I hated that. If social media was like it is now, and I was constantly reading comments from random strangers like this one, that would have been devastating for my already low self-confidence.
So the start problem here is that you'd get your ass off of social media because it's cancerous to your mentality. Secondly, half of our problems is that we give voice and power to way too much unfiltered background noise. Because there are people to whom which being judged for their appearances to the point where they are considered not worthy of dating because look at their social status, look at their attraction, look at their face, look at their imperfections, who would ever want to go out with this can be the primary point that creates the environment of social negativity that is superficial. And finding real affection and real love requires you to oversee and supersede the superficial and create a real connection. And the problem that the current dating market has, and why almost all of the people up on the conversation are cooked. So, for someone like Trophy Wife Isis, Miss Nights into fucking therapy, having to come with the terms that her man possibly got with her specifically to create a circumstance where he could control a woman who was dependent upon his wealth. Because she was chasing sprinkle, sprinkle, find you a man that will make your life easy, sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. That kind of mentality and viewpoint comes at a cost. You want a soft and happy lifestyle. But rather than finding a man that is a manicured monster, you find a socially uninhabited neophyte that violently abuses you in such a way where you are not safe with this person, and you have to put the relationship status and its benefits above your personal safety. That then leads to you believing that everybody must be like this. When in fact you could leave that man, leave the dating environment, work on yourself, or find a different person. Which itself lends credence to hypergamy. Because in the worst violent, disparate condition you could be in, a single mother with a young child, those three things, single mother with a kid, is probably the fastest way that you will have people look at you like you are rotten goods. It's not specific to just women. It's not even specific to women. This is the same thing for men. The superficial status dictates that, she's single with a baby. You know what that means. Oh, he's single with a baby. You know what that means. The only reason why single father with a child causes pregnant pause is because we know, as a biological imperative, men cannot have kids by themselves. There had to have been a mother that gave birth to the child. Where is the mother? Why are you as a parent with solo custody? If there isn't a horror story or a sob story, not to say sob story to insult people who are in this situation, but specifically a sob story as in there is a horrible story behind why you're a single parent, aka Dan Green being a solo parent to his twins because his wife died from a car collision. If there is not a story or an explanation behind why you have a child, if it's not your biological child, so yeah, I decided that I wanted to adopt. I have more than enough money to take care of a kid by myself. They have everything they would ever want and ever need. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not trying to groom this child into a housewife or into some type of fucking child bride. That is the only thing that gives people pregnant pause. Otherwise, single mother with children is the fastest way to get no swipes on a Tinder profile, or a Humble profile, or a Hinge profile. Because it is the same marker as evil drug dealer that beats women. It's markers that immediately tell a person to be superficial, look only at what the person can provide you, look only at the resources you're potentially opening yourself to, and look at the potential of the outcomes that are going to be positive and negative for yourself should you involve yourself with it. It's the same math you would do about injecting yourself with drugs. If men and women were drugs that you inject into your veins, what would you rather have? The premier designer drug that has an instruction manual that tells you exactly where to stick it in your body to get the most maximum high? And then when you take it, no matter the form once you take it in, where you consume it, where you inject it into your blood veins, where you snort it, where you take it as a suppository, gives you no greater consequence other than a euphoric high, versus doing it once makes you addicted to crack for the rest of your fucking life, and now your hair and your teeth are falling out, and you have no ability to survive. If men and women were drugs, what would you prefer? Drug number 1 and drug number 2? That's both a hyperbole question and also a real question for people to interact with chat. You would probably prefer option 1, because option 1 is probably going to be FDA attested. The Friends and Delinquents Association of Dating. The Friends and Dating Association. This man here, he's FDA approved. He's got a high credit score, a big dick, and he really loves listening to people talk at the end of the day and giving fuck rubs while he asks, "How was your day, honey?" Versus, this is Hector. He likes cream pieing women on dates after he said that he's respectful and an eligible bachelor. Moving forward.
Top of all of that, it's easy to look at people who appear to have a lot going for them on social media and play the comparison game. If I just
pause, that's exactly right there why it's the problem. It's a validation by distance and attention.
wasn't ugly, or if I just made more money, maybe I wouldn't be feeling so lonely. Social media gives us access to the top 1% of insanely attractive and wealthy people. And when we see that all the time, it makes us feel like we're inferior in comparison really quickly. Social media is really good at showing us how good we don't have it. There are so many reasons to believe you're unlovable if the thing you're spending hours a day doing is communicating to you that you're not good enough. If the older generation was constantly criticizing and comparing themselves like we seem to do, then maybe stories like these wouldn't have happened at all. I'm not sure if you've caught on yet, but people have a tendency to set up unfair expectations as to what traits their partner absolutely needs to have in order to be considered worthy to invest in. Men and women do this equally. Don't get it twisted, my 79% male audience. I have personally seen videos in which women claim their man needs to make 6 figures and be 6 feet tall at a minimum. And I've seen videos or comment sections where men are actively bashing women who don't have the body type they're looking for. Even if you don't do these things, which I'm sure you don't because you're all perfect, social media has a way of sticking with you, slowly building up this image of society's ideal partner over time. And if we're taking in content like this, one day we could end up believing that we actually do need these traits or features in order to feel satisfied with our partner. Potentially not even for our own happiness, but to satisfy the societal norms set around us. Another issue that I'm sure comes to mind here is watching adult content on the internet that's extremely damaging for our mental. As a man,
I would say it's less the porn and it's actually more the thirst traps. The porn is fictional. Like you're talking about OnlyFans women that decide they want to be Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue and potentially get pregnant because they have sex with 100 to 1,000 guys with little to no protection for finishing. It has much more a likely outcome that is cap in the highest level of being cap than I've ever seen. Because thirst traps are more likely to rot your brain and make you unsatisfied with the outcomes that you have in your life and in your dating market than a person doing porn. Because porn is designed to be a symbolization of desire and peak. When you start talking about gonzo porn, because if you want to put the blame on something, put it on gonzo porn. Gonzo meaning immediate and sudden. So, not fake, not scripted. They're actually having sex with somebody who they don't know. It's literally random strangers fucking somebody, a hot wife, a hot dad, wife swapping, public sex with a partner, public sex with strangers, bang buses, casting couches. If it is something where it is very clear this is not for play, this is not for camera angles. While there might be a cameraman, this is not a production made by Wicked Pictures. It is not a parody made by Wood Rocket. It is your best friend smashing women after women after women with a balaclava on his face. That's more likely to actually destroy the semblance of a person's expectations of what they should look into and expect out of society. Otherwise, it is literally just fiction that is a comparative escape. Versus, you scroll on Twitter, you see that best friend that happens to do that. Let's use King Nazir as a stand-in for those that don't have people who are related to this. You have a best friend, he is a porn star. Every single time you see him go out, every single time you flick the screen, you see him with another woman. Boom, another woman. Boom, another woman. Boom, another woman. Oh, here are some cuts that came from the porn tapes that he made with those women. Like Alicia, how he's got a spread eagle. Felicia, how he's got her spread eagle with her back out. Georgia got her spread eagle with her back out, with her toes standing on top of her head. Carmen, he's got Carmen face down in his lap. Said she's a great friend and she loves to eat fish. Oh yeah, she loves to eat fish, all right. But I'm certainly, that's not a big old Cape Cod in her mouth. This would be what destroys the semblance of people's ability to connect to reality versus the perception they're getting from their phone. Holler if you hear me.
Man, this content is so harmful because it paints the way that we view, think about, and interact with women really, really poorly. If you're watching this consistently, you're gonna get so used to this fake image of what a woman looks like and what a woman as a partner should be in your life, that when you start to interact with real women, you're just gonna sound like a bumbling idiot trying to communicate with an alien or something. This is not—
Pause. Not if you already have built the skills in which to associate with women. There is 1 to 5 instances, all which require the same starting point in order for porn to be so consumptively caustic to your ability to relate to people that it is so nasty that you would have to be removed. And unfortunately, we all know that answer. Say it with me now. 1, 2, 3. Children. Children that grow up watching porn who have adultized themselves would be the reason why that'd be a problem. Because if they've never dealt with a woman, if they've never handled a woman, if they've never talked to a man, they never handled a man, they never got involved with a man, they never communicated with a man, they never discussed things with a man, every single time that they've ever seen somebody, it's always been a superficial, kid-friendly connection. They've never had a deeper, emotional, mature conversation, let alone mature experiences, and navigating those mature experiences, which children shouldn't be fucking having. Then they're not going to understand how to act and move in these situations. They will be at the mercy of everything they know, and they know nothing. So what do they have to go off of? Ooh, look! Backdoor Sluts number 556, featuring Alana Pierce! It's not hard. The stranglehold that people have to blame porn on their problems, when it's instead a socialization issue, is so soy. It is so bad, and it is so soy. Take it from me, the ethical slut.
Not what the standard is, my guy. The unrealistic pictures of what life and love should be like, painted by the content we take in on our phones, can easily cause our standards for relationships to skyrocket to levels that are really challenging for any normal human to reach. I think social media has tricked us into believing that the right relationship should be totally smooth sailing all the way through because that's what real love looks like. If you really love someone, then it should be a piece of cake forever. And if it isn't, then it just isn't a match, right? Real relationships are challenging. I'm not saying that every relationship is bound to be a bloodbath with fights all the time. I'm just saying that you have to be willing to make sacrifices often, and you have to be willing to step up and take accountability when it's necessary. One of the biggest differences between a relationship that thrives and one that struggles is you being able to happily make the sacrifices and take accountability because you know that even though that stuff isn't necessarily fun, the person that you're with makes it more than worth it. Take it from a guy who's married. My wife will ask me to go do stuff with her pretty often that I do not care about at all, like go see a play or something. And it would be easy for me to say, no, I'd rather do things that interest me, like drawing stick figures all day. But I know she recognizes the sacrifice I'm making by putting my interests aside and involving myself in hers, even if it's just a small one. Relationships are a challenge. Not every day is going to be easy, and that can seem like a wake-up call for some. The difference should be that the right person makes the challenge and the sacrifice worth it every time.
And that is the context behind if he wanted to, he would. I talk about them all the time. What he just described is the basis of a relationship where a person makes an emotional bid. And emotional bids are the basis upon which when someone says, this cares and matters a lot to me, and all of it is necessary for understanding the ability to converse with things. This is where the emotional bid brings in the concept of if he wanted to, he would. If he loved you, he would. Because the way that people use emotional bids is they use them as a terrible cudgel upon which the framework of conversations will last towards and into nothing. A woman meets a man that is willing to do an emotional bid for her that no other man does, because culturally, where he comes from, he's supposed to get it in, get his jollies, and get out. You meet the one guy that does the emotional bids that you claim every guy should do, and rightfully, but this usually goes wrongly, in that standard, that now becomes your baseline. The bar that they say that is in hell, which I now guess is in the fucking void somewhere. The bar rises because of that standard. And whether or not you break up with that person, your limit is now, I want a man who cares about my hobbies. But if the woman does not give reciprocality, this is where the men will intervene with, well, if she wanted to, she would. If she wanted to and she cared, she would. Because the conversation is only ever femme-coded. Even now, this conversation is feminine-coded. Me, man, with wife, when my wife knows that I hate going to plays, but I do it for her, because I know that that emotional bit matters. Yes, but unfortunately, the emotional bit of men, hey yo, I want to go half and split on this date. 50-50. Oh, it's because you broke? If you just broke, just say that. If you were broke, you just say that. It's not about being broke. I want to know that you want me for more than my money. You're a dusty, real men pay for dates, full. Don't you know how much time it took me to get ready for this date? Do I need to break down the physical product amount of how much application I have to do in terms of makeup based on how much expectation I expect to get out of this date? Don't you understand how much time it took me? It stops there. That's where the conversation dies. Every time. Because on the thumbnail that I designed for this video, I pulled from examples of things that you'll probably find in YouTube format. Basic shit. Basic shit. Basic relationship standards. Basic relationship expectations and comparisons. Let alone compromises. They get framed female-centric and gynocentric. Whether it's group dates or casual dates, one-on-one dates where you start out in a coffee shop or at Waffle House, and then you take her to Trevioli's. Then you take her to the Michelin 5 restaurant after you've known her for a year and a half. You don't have an expectation that if he wanted to marry you, he would. Therefore, just because you've been dating him for 6 months means that he should be ready to propose to you with a ring that's worth more than 4 times the salary of his week. All of that shit is garbage. Horrible relationship advice, chosen and used to make advantage and take advantage of the marketing around basic conventions of social framework, especially that of engagements, weddings, and wedding photography. If you want to save yourself money, basically, wherever you choose to meet someone that you can get to know them at, you have to take your relationships as quickly as the pace of the relationship dictates. If the person wants to move fast, you have to move not so fast, but quickly enough. You should never be doing something like getting married within a week. You should probably never be doing something like getting married only after 14 years of basically having a common law marriage, where you call her your best friend, but she's the mother of 8 of your kids. But for some reason, you still haven't put a ring on it. Or performed some form of social community pair bonding mating ritual better than a registry at the court to demonstrate your desire to explain and get across how much you care about them. Somewhere between, I literally married him in Vegas, and I've been dating him for 14 years and we have 6 kids. Somewhere between this should be the basis for which your information and your takeaway from the discussion should be. And then inside that framework, scoping something like emotional bids into the discussion and the development of the framework for your ability to conversate on the things you have to fucking work towards. Because from this point in this person's video,
I don't have any real stats to back.
Of course you have no real stats to back.
I don't have any real stats to back.
From this person's viewpoint in this video, it's 5:19. In this person's video, he went from old couples used to have real love in the past. He saw Gertrude from beyond the bridge, and he knew that that was the thighs he wanted crushing his head to this date. Why can't I find relationships like that? Oh, it's because people made fun of me calling me a dusty when I was younger. Man, that really sucked. I really hated when that happened to me. We don't talk about the serious parts of relationship when people do that because they're so focused on the abstract sense of social media and porn that they miss the forest for the trees. And we also don't talk about the fact that relationships are hard, but we do talk about them. In fact, that's probably the most commonly spoken about fact all the goddamn time. There's been no shortage of fucking clips just on another influencer and his wife's relationship. 15 different times in 5 different spaces. And I'm not talking just about Nisa Joma and fucking Ian. You've had people going on to lover podcasts, basically having full-armed discussions and blowouts over discussions they had with their romantic partner because they effectively went onto the broadcast to flex, and now they're getting embarrassed by a group of people just asking basic goddamn questions. You've got men at panels trying to explain, not to shit on men, but to explain to women the realities of what actually goes on inside of a man's mind. And then men being told by those women that no, women know what men want, despite the fact that the man in front of them is telling them, no, that's not what we want. This is how we think. All of the framework behind how to get into the deeper notions of what's holding back relationship status sometimes has to be cultural, more than it is just a general, comprehensive breakdown on the interpersonal level to the point of an individual. And that's because that's culture. I'm not going to be able to explain any of that to a person. You have to just be from it or you don't understand it. But it is bad framework to work from the standard of what he's going off of here. Because it will only ever lead to a negative and shit outcome if you take piecemeal advice and try to apply it broadly to everything and everyone.
Time. I don't have any real stats to back this stuff up, but I do think that people in general have lost their way when it comes to what a real relationship looks like and feels like, primarily thanks to the falsehoods that rampant social media use has tricked us into believing. And if you're watching a video with this title, I'm sure you believe that too. Even with all the chaos and nonsense when it comes to modern relationships, I think the best, most tangible thing we can do is take a good long look at ourselves. I feel like the majority of relationship discussions and advice on YouTube are always looking out for how to identify a good partner or how to avoid a bad one, but I don't see quite as many videos talking about how we ourselves can be a good partner in the future. If you're interested in that, then you'll have to be really honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses. Bettering yourself is never going to be a bad thing. You do it for a lot of reasons, including your future partner, but if that doesn't work out, then hey, at least you did it for yourself, I guess. After that, I would encourage you to, and please stay with me here, try anyway. If you're still questioning it, you are capable of being loved, and there are still people out there who want to do relationships the right way, I promise. It might be really hard to get that ball rolling, or it might feel impossible when you just keep meeting absolutely terrible people like these ones, but you can't give up on it. There was an old piece of advice that I heard a long time ago that said, putting your heart out there is never a mistake. Never let your heart become calloused, and that stuck with me for over a decade now. It would get me through some hard times, like in middle school when I would send a girl a "I like you, do you like me?" text after weeks of deliberating because I was so nervous, and her first response would be, LOL. Also, of course, take what you see and hear on social media about relationships with a grain of salt, including content from me. If you're questioning whether or not this is sound advice, then think about it this way. If enough people watch this and utilize what they hear, eventually maybe 2 people will meet who applied my ideas to their dating lives, and I will have become the ultimate matchmaker in the process. That would be kind of neat, for me at least. Relationships today are messy. I've personally felt and experienced that, but I've also felt the joy that eventually comes when you don't give up, even when you're given reason after reason as to why you should. When you find a partner who means business, there won't be criticisms or comparisons, and you won't feel slighted by having to sacrifice. You'll just wonder how you ever got along without them.
What a Zoomer level take. So, in comparison of what we just consumed, an extremely 7-minute shorter video basically says, damn, we killed the dating market because we're addicted to porn and because we have fear of missing out and fear of comparisons from social media. You should try working on yourself. That's it. Try working on yourself and keep reaching out even if you're burned and even if you're on the statistical black pill. This level of advice is probably the kind of thing that I could say definitely would make somebody, like say Nick, be extremely fucking annoyed. And it's so goddamn useless. It is so fucking useless. Now, I'm currently working on a video. I'm working on several things. But in line with my status of I need to work on putting out 2 edited videos a month. One of these is going to be a video game review, which is not in reference to what we're talking about here. But the other one was the video that I was going to put out before concerning Brianna the Mannequin and femicels. Something that keeps coming up in my research. Every time I do research, or I consume the content of some such people that are at different places in their lives, the most common thing that I keep noticing with all of them is that they are so cooked on black pills. I'm being DM'd. They are so cooked on black pills that it is impossible for them to meet each other in the same place at the same time, and to be prepared to meet each other at the same place at the same time, and go through the effort of relationships at the same place and in the same time, to give themselves the space and the breath to develop the interpersonal connection that would lead to a better, happier state and a successful, healthy relationship with respect and boundaries and effort, because unfortunately it's easier to just be a pay pig and get into femdom, to get a similar connection but without the risk of being denied, because people are scared of getting hurt. I need a word stronger than fear of making new connections. But every single piece of content that I have looked at in pursuant of researching for that video has basically shown me a person that has more or less gone through the same things Brianna did, which, for context for those that were not there and will not watch that VsChat, a woman who was more interested in being an it girl than actually having a good relationship that fell into her lap, because she was in a good mental place and was ready for it, was willing to make the considerations and the compromises necessary to make it work, and did so because she didn't just do it to be in a relationship. She did it because she loved being in a relationship with the person, she loved the person, and she loves the way the person made them feel. Instead, chased being a social media influencer and YouTuber because she felt that she should be doing more with herself. And she now is rubbed raw to the point where the content is the only thing that keeps her going, because she doesn't have anything else keeping her involved. Every single time I watch one of these takes from one of these men or women, they're not necessarily incels. They're not even necessarily men going their way. They're just people giving life update posts and checking in on where they are at mentally. They all have the same background, which is that they are wallflowers. And the last time something special happened to them, nothing ever special happened to them again after it. If there's one takeaway that you can get from coming back from this VsChat, what you need to come away with is that alongside you, it's going to take work and effort to make a relationship work. And on the question of whether or not men and women can be friends, yes, but you're going to have to do work. You're going to have to be accountable to your friends. The same way you're going to have to be accountable to yourself and your morals, and the same way you're going to be accountable to your sexual romantic partner. Because you have to be careful with your relationships the same way you need to be careful with your man or woman or trans NB puppy girl in a onesie's heart. The best framework I can give you is you have to basically behave as though you're on a love route in a video game with no do-overs. You have to be willing to try things. You have to be willing to both be willing to get hurt and be willing to ask tough questions that may seem hurtful, but are actually necessary to get a person to come out of a shell and mature and grow. Not just for your friends and your, not just for your romantic partner, but also for your friends too. You have to be willing to do the same work with getting a friend or a girlfriend to try a new experience as you do with having to hold a friend accountable because, hey, you got a good thing going with your girlfriend or with your boyfriend. Why are you throwing it away? Because you want to have an unsubstantial fling with someone who you don't even fucking know. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. I hope I have sparked you to have good conversations in the chat, including from when I had to go outside to go get my cares package. But hopefully I leave you with something to think about on your way out of the door. I am Carl. This has been my chat. Thank you and goodbye. I will see you all later. Now I'm going to turn into a statue again. I will go live soon-ish, but I need to go prepare dinner now. So it'll be a bit. Bye, everybody. I'm going to see you in finding papers, and I'm billing you for therapy.